And who are you voting for?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. Are you Amish? Can I ask? Awesome. Yep. And so the Amish are going to be coming out to vote this year?
Some of them, yeah.
What has caused so many of the Amish to register to vote this year?
Probably just they want to get out and vote and make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you guys been affected this past 4 years underneath the Biden-Harris administration?
I would say definitely, yeah.
And in what ways has the Amish community been affected?
One way is that with Trump, the Amish had, I would say, they had more freedom, and with the Biden administration, there was not, it started getting tighter and tighter.
The Amish are voting, and they're voting en masse, but they're just riding what appears to be a red wave that's sweeping the key swing state of Pennsylvania. We've got the latest on what to expect tomorrow in the Keystone State. Get your pen and paper ready because we're about to dive right in. Hey, gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to help you stay sane in these insane times. So you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Also, before we dive in here, I know some of you are going to have a hard time sleeping tonight on election eve, but I'm not. And that's because I've come across something that has absolutely revolutionized my life. It's called Beam Dream, and it's completely changed the way I sleep. Gang, I sip a nice hot cup of Beam Dream each night, and I kid you not, I am out like a light and have the most restful sleep ever all throughout the night. It's become a nightly ritual of mine that I look forward to each and every day. Plus, I never wake up feeling groggy the next morning. Instead, I feel refreshed and ready to take on the day, just like I do right now. And they're offering Turley Talks listeners an exclusive discount of, get this, 50% site-wide for a limited time. So just click the QR code on the screen or use the link below to get the best night of sleep you've had in years and propel your wellness journey to the next stage. Click the QR code or go to shopbeam.com/TurleyTalks. That's shopbeam.com/TurleyTalks for your amazing discount. Elon Musk's enthusiasm is through the roof on Trump's prospects for winning the Keystone State. He noted that as of the other day, the Democrats are over 600,000 early votes worse off than they were at this time in 2020, when Trump lost by only 80,000 votes. And according to Elon, unless something very strange happens, the Democrats will suffer a blowout loss in Pennsylvania on Tuesday. The mail-in returns for Pennsylvania are absolutely through the roof for the Republicans. As of this weekend, we've hit the return rate goal of 33% of all early vote ballots, whereas Democrats have dropped significantly from their 2020 high of about 80% to now just around 56% of all mail-in ballots. And that's the key, I think, to understanding the dynamic in Pennsylvania right now. Republican early voting is basically meeting their 2020 totals, whereas the Democrats are significantly below their 2020 totals. Patrick Ruffini of Echelon Insights had some very interesting data points from this weekend. He's seeing a significant minority Democrat turnout problem in Pennsylvania, with the lowest Democrat performances coming out of what he calls Latino Philly, Black Philly, and Black Pittsburgh. Only about half of the low prop Black Philly Democrats, so these are voters who voted in only one of the last four elections, only about half of them from what he calls Black Philly have returned their absentee ballots in comparison to this time in 2020. So just so you know, it's not just happening in Pennsylvania. We're seeing a similar dynamic play out in Ohio as well. The three biggest black counties in the state are in the top worst performing counties in Ohio right now. So this is a pattern that we've been seeing in Georgia and Louisiana and North Carolina. The black vote just simply isn't anywhere near it needs to be for Kamala. And to add insult to injury, more blacks are voting for Trump than ever before, upwards of 20%. So the key here is that the electorate that Kamala needs to pull this off simply did not come out in the early vote, particularly in Pennsylvania. Again, what's key here is that these voters have already voted. This is done. So we do have a very good idea of how things are turning out thus far in 2024. Now, again, things could change. Yes. We've still got today and tomorrow in terms of mail-in ballots coming in. Yes. But just in terms of the raw numbers of the mail-in ballots that have been requested, let alone returned, they're nowhere near for the Democrats where they were this time in 2020. So now, like I talked about in our first video, as far as tomorrow is concerned, Election Day, it really does all come down to turnout. If Election Day turnout is like what it was in 2020, then it will be a solid Republican electorate in Pennsylvania. It was, I believe, an R plus 30 electorate in Pennsylvania on Election Day back in 2020. And keep in mind, Republicans haven't even met the early vote baseline from 2020 as of yet. They're still a bit under their 2020 early vote total. So that means they haven't cannibalized their Election Day vote. If Pennsylvania Republicans simply vote the way they did in 2020, gang, they've got this. This is what Elon is so excited about. Again, this appears to be a key pattern of this electorate as a whole in 2024. Republicans are voting like it's 2020 all over again, but with a vengeance. They've been waiting for this day for 4 freaking years. They'll crawl through over glass, broken glass just to vote. They're either matching or exceeding their 2020 early vote numbers. But Democrats are voting as if it were 2016. They're consistently lagging far behind their 2020 early vote numbers, like what we're seeing in Pennsylvania. And to that end, to guarantee that massive turnout, you're going to love this, Elon's PAC America is going to be busing Pennsylvania Republicans to the polls tomorrow. Did you see this? It's very much like what the Democrats did back in 2022 to help put Fetterman over the top. Elon's providing lots of buses to make sure everyone gets to the polls. I'm wondering if a bunch of Amish are going to be on those buses. It'd be wonderful. Word on the street right now is that Governor Josh Shapiro is not particularly bullish on Harris's chances in Pennsylvania, and for good reason, as Elon alluded to, with the margins slashed so significantly in early voting. Now, in terms of forecasting what to expect for the vote as a whole, our good friend, data analyst Seth Keshel, has just put out his final 2024 prediction at his Captain K's Corner Substack. You definitely want to subscribe to that. It's very, very good analysis. And he's put together all of the data to assess what to expect tomorrow as best we can. We are not prophets. We cannot see into the future. This is just based on what we know now and what we can see now. Here is what is probably the most likely outworking, okay? Make sure you take it. Do not come back to me tomorrow night all upset if, God forbid, Kamala prevails. You told me he was going to win. I gave you projections based on the objective data we have. That's all I'm doing. Everybody get that, I hope. I hope you all understand. We all get hot under the collar when elections don't go the way we want them to. So that's just with that qualification. I think Seth gave a very, very good analysis. You certainly be the judge of that. But he starts with voter registration. And this is very important because voter registration tends to be very predictive in terms of how an election plays out, in that the party that tends to have the advantage when it comes to voter registration trends tends to win. So Seth notes that 64 of Pennsylvania's 67 counties have all swung to the right since 2020. So Pennsylvania has gone from a D plus 7.5 advantage back in 2020 to now just a D plus 3 advantage. So their voter registration has been slashed in half, meaning that they've suffered a net loss of over 200,000 registered Democrats, which is devastating in Pennsylvania because Pennsylvania always votes to the right of its Democrat registration advantage. Again, remember, Biden won Pennsylvania by only 80,000 votes in 2020, even though the Democrats had a 7.5% registration advantage. So as Seth notes, what that means is that Harris would have to post absolutely overwhelming margins in Philadelphia and in Allegheny County, where Pittsburgh is, to overcome this voter deficit. But at the same time, she would also have to shave off a significant margin of Trump's rural vote, which old Scranton Joe could do. He was able to do that because he still had relative popularity among Pennsylvania's older working class voters. But it is highly questionable, very dubious whether Kamala could pull that off. And as we just saw, she's already struggling to get the Philly vote out. So things don't look very good for her on the surface when it just comes to the amount of voters she has to work with. But because the Democrats are so far behind in the early vote firewall, their firewall now is about 400,000 or so, significantly behind the 1.1 million that they had amassed in 2020. While at the same time, the Republicans are just shy of their total 2020 early vote. So they're actually right around where they were in 2020 as the Democrats kind of imploded. If that's the case, all Republicans have to do from this point forward is just turn out like they turned out in 2020 with a solid R plus 10, 15 turnout. They don't even need an R plus 30. This R plus 15. And they got this. That 80,000 vote margin that Biden squeaked by with turns into a 200,000 plus margin for the Republicans. Very similar to what we're seeing happening right now in Arizona. So according to Seth's analysis, that is basically what we're looking at. We're looking at what looks to be about a 3-point win for Trump as of tomorrow. Now, again, all kinds of things could happen, of course, to frustrate that. We could get a massive amount of ballot returns favorable to Democrats tomorrow night. We're all still traumatized by that. We'll see. But again, this isn't 2020. Everyone didn't get a ballot. And then we have no idea how many people are sending them back. No, we know how many people requested ballots in Pennsylvania, and that number is nowhere near 2020 levels. So whatever does get returned should be relatively negligible. Or perhaps Democrats will be the ones to turn out en masse tomorrow. Perhaps we'll be looking at a D plus 20 electorate. But we do have a way of putting that hypothesis to the test. All we have to do is actually look at two states, Washington and Oregon. And the reason for that is because these are two, of course, solid blue states, thoroughly Democrat, but they only vote by mail. They're about, as I understand it, they're 100% vote by mail states. So what's interesting in both these states, their vote by mail, which of course is very blue, very Democrat, their Democrat-dominated vote by mail this year is significantly down from where it was at this time in 2020. So in Washington, as of November 1st, 44% of their mail-in ballots had been returned. But in 2020, it was 53%. So that's a very significant point. That's a 44, 30, yeah, it's a 9-point lag, right? What am I? I'm doing my math quickly here. That's a 9-point lag. Again, similar to what we're seeing in the early vote in the Philly areas. It's even worse in Oregon. While 67% of their ballots were returned by this time in 2020, only 38% of their mail-in ballots have been returned as of now. And that 38% is even below the average of their ballot return rates between the years of 2000 and 2016, which was 44%. So what this suggests is something we've been seeing all over the electoral map. Democrats simply are not that jazzed about Kamala. They're not coming out in the numbers they did back in 2020. It's just not happening. And if Democrats aren't that jazzed about her, there's no reason to think that independents will be. So there's no reason to believe that Democrats are going to be coming out big on Election Day. Historically, they don't. Election Day is always dominated by Republicans. And given what we're seeing in Washington and Oregon, doesn't look like they will. So they don't and they won't. Here's another metric, which is very interesting, although this is a poll. It's merely suggestive. But the latest NBC survey found that among those who have already voted, Harris voters outnumber Trump voters by 7 points, whereas for those who have yet to vote, who plan on voting on Election Day, Trump voters outnumber Harris voters by 16. And this NBC poll corroborates Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen and his findings, which found that 50% of Trump voters nationally say they're voting on Election Day, whereas only 39% of Harris voters are voting on Election Day. So what that means is Republicans have a lot more gas left in the tank to get this done and bring Trump over the finish line. Now, again, that said, obviously this isn't over yet. I'm just giving you some predictive indicators and what they forecast based on some objective numbers. Anything can happen between now and tomorrow night. So it's our job to do what? It's our job to do what? It's our job to bring this home for President Trump. Call your friends, call your loved ones, get as many people as you possibly can to the polls, especially if you're in Pennsylvania. And let's do this. Let's make 2024 absolutely epic.